Okay, we are live. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good morning. Good evening. Whatever the time it is that you are watching the stream. I know some people end up watching live streams later on in the week. Hold on, my phone is ringing. Apologies about that. Oh, it's my brother. Let me see if I can call him back. Hello, Mario. Hello. Hey, listen. Is it possible to call you back? I'm in the middle of a live stream. All right, I'll call you back, Mario. All right. Sorry about that. Okay, so let me hit the fan. Hold on. Okay. All right. Like I said, so welcome to a live stream. This is my third one, I think. I'm doing a live stream. Um, Good afternoon, whatever time it is that you're watching this stream. Yada yada yada. As always, please, 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 participate in the conversation. For those of you that end up watching live, it definitely helps me when I know that I'm not just talking to like nobody, right? And of course, right now I'm talking to nobody, but right, you never know. So today I wanted to focus on, I believe I had slated the No King's Day protest that took place yesterday. Kind of alongside Donald Trump's military parade, which nobody seemed to really care about too much. And really, Trump. Well, yeah. So we're gonna hit on that, and then we're gonna hit on the Israel versus Iran situation because, quite frankly, I don't know how what's happening between Israel and Iran is not uh, all the evidence that you need to get your hands on some nukes as soon as possible, right? Like, if the entire point is to dissuade countries from pursuing nuclear weapons, I don't think Iran being bombed by Israel or Russia invading Ukraine is convincing anyone that they should not be spending as much money as possible to get their hands on some nukes as soon as possible, if you're asking me. But we will get into all of these various subjects. All right. So first, let's start with the No King's Day protests, which took place yesterday. Like I said, alongside Donald Trump's military parade, and the protests were pretty much put together in protest. Actually, I don't even want to put the words in their mouth, right? No King's Day, because we had the ICE protests, and I think the No King's Day protests were in response to Trump in general and what they deem as his authoritarian actions, and they just so happen to coincide with the fact that protests had picked up, the past couple of days this week, in response to the ICE raids happening in various cities and various countries. Though Trump himself, he has said that he's going to kind of pull back from the raids because it's hurting agriculture, restaurant industry, various industries. So he's going to kind of pull back on that a little bit. So whatever. So the No King's Day protest took place yesterday. I disagree with many that deemed them successful simply because the streets were packed in some cities. I think that's a weird way to judge whether or not a protest was successful. Um, in fact, I think I have like Dave, was his name David Packman? Let me see if I can find him. I don't know. Um, but yeah, I don't view these protests as having really any impact. I don't think Trump, the way that he governs, is going to change much at all. And it shouldn't. He won the presidency. It's only like 6 months into his presidency, which, when you think about it, is kind of wild. Like, think about all of the stuff that Trump has already done the things happening, and we are only like 6 months into his second term, right? Like we still have a ways to go into the midterms, and then even after the midterms, depending on how the midterms go, we have more years left of Trump with the executive action that he can kind of use however he wants to use it. So the protests to me were akin to like whining and just like complaining. One problem that I think this country has really is we like symbolic representation and symbolic action over the things you need to do to actually have change, right? Like you have to be engaged in voting if you want to have any type of change in the in like laws and governing. You have to vote. You have to know who you're voting for, right? Many of us we go and we vote for politicians because they have a D next to their name or because they have an R next to their name. We don't really look into their policies, how they voted in the past, how they are most likely to vote in the future. We don't do any of that. And a part of that is just kind of the function, like the way that life functions, to a certain extent. You have a family, you have a job, you have certain things. It's very hard to kind of stay on top of the news the way you need to stay on top of the news to really kind of get a grasp on okay, what's actually happening, what's in these bills. For example, the for example, the big beautiful bill, right? The big beautiful bill that Trump passed, right? Most people haven't actually looked into the bill and read the actual bill, right? You kind of read what, whatever news program that you watch says it's in the bill, but they're going to highlight certain parts in the bill and they're going to not speak about other parts in the bill. And who knows which parts of the big, beautiful bill you actually would care about if you knew what was in the bill, right? If you actually read the bill, you could decide for yourself. You know what? I like these parts of the bill. I don't like these parts of the bill, right? Like this is kind of how, at least from my vantage point, you actually become an informed voter. You have to inform yourself, right? You can't rely on Fox News. You can't rely on MSNBC. You can't rely on CNN. You can't rely on these various platforms to kind of know what you want or have your best interest in heart. You have to have your best interest at heart. If you're asking me, right? So I think that's that's definitely a problem. So again, most people don't know who they're voting for and why, right? You have to be engaged civically. You have to know who you're voting for and how they plan on voting, right? You have to follow through while they're in office, right? Too many times we vote somebody in, right? For example, the presidency, right? We vote for the president. They get in or they don't get in. We don't come back around until 4 years later, right? And so if the person that you wanted to win the presidency actually gets in and they're in office, you should be following along, seeing okay, how did this person actually preside, right? What bills did they sign? What executive actions or orders did they implement, right? You should be following along because especially if it's their first term, because when they're running for re-election, you need to be able to say, okay, how did their first term go, right? Was it a case of them doing something and not doing something, or did they for some reason not have the right people in Congress, the House or the Senate, or the Supreme Court block certain things, right? Like we have to be politically engaged, and too many of us we're not engaged because it's not sexy, right? Like being an informed voter, being intentional about how you vote, how you engage civically is not sexy. I don't know where we got it in our minds that it's sexy. It's not sexy. But yeah, protesting is sexy. You go out there, you feel good, you get to chant and march with people, right? There's a communal element to it, so like you feel really engaged. It's not a shock that people enjoy protesting, especially these days where the the stakes are not as high, right? Like we're not in a place where back in the founding of this country when they were protesting or committing vandalism of property. There's the threat of a military a pushback. The civil rights protests where, having hoses sprayed on you or being sick by dogs, right? You were like, they were, and shot at, right? Like you were putting your body on the line. The cost of protesting now is not nearly as high, thanks to the successes of previous generations, and on top of the fact that everyone has a smartphone, which means that everyone has a camera. So, officers and whatnot, they are a lot more worried about how they're perceived, about how their profession is perceived, about how their various departments across the country are perceived. So, actions are different today because um, it's hard to do things um, in the shadows. It's hard. It's very difficult. Almost everything that you do will be, put on some type of news program or news station. So you have to act accordingly. And excuse me while I drink some water. I am very parched. Okay, so yeah. So until the people that were out there marching in the No Kings protests begin to really take a serious look at how they are engaging with politics on a day to day, I'm afraid that things aren't going to change as much as they would like things to change. Because that's where change happens. It happens by yourself. It happens when you are alone and you decide, you know what, I want to read the actual legislative bill over watching another show on Netflix or another program on Hulu or playing a video game for another hour, right? And I'm not just talking to you or about you guys. I'm talking about me. I'm talking to me too, right? Like, again, I've been trying to do a lot more reading this year because last year, I like to kind of take a mental tally of, how many books I read. I was embarrassed at how little reading I did last year. Yeah, I read articles and things of that nature, and right. So like, I read things, I read things, but as far as reading books, I was embarrassed. I could count on like two hands how many books I read last year, probably even one hand, which was very embarrassing. And so this year, I got off to like a hot start, and then I've fallen off the past couple of weeks, months really, and I'm trying to kind of stay on top of myself to know you got to read, you got to read, you got to read, because that's how you actually, for me, gain knowledge, right? And so, I'm trying to read more about the U.S. history. The founders and kind of, what did Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson and George Washington and James Madison and you know these various gentlemen who were responsible. What did they intend the Constitution to actually do? What was the climate around it, right? Because we read the documents, but really, like, what were they intending? Like, what was happening? How were they feeling? And so I'm trying to read more, and so I have to, read actual bills instead of reading articles about the bills. I have to go and go on the White House website and actually read, certain things, right? Reading news sources that I'm not that familiar with, right? We all have to kind of engage with politics differently if we want to actually have the change that we want. Don't just fall uh, prey to the sexy. Protesting is sexy. I got you, but it's not really what we need. We need to be engaged politically, and that starts when no one is around, when it's just you and your phone and your laptop, like I'm using right now to do this live stream. Whatever you have to do, that's where these things have to start. Where we engage and we take responsibility for becoming more informed people that vote and engage with the political process. So that's how I feel about the people protesting in the No Kings Day protest yesterday, right? But I mentioned that um, even though these protests were in large part about Donald Trump's, presidency overall, and the different laws and things that he's been signing, because it happened on the backs of the protests earlier this previous week regarding ICE and the ICE raids. Immigration was a huge part of these protests, right? Many protests, yeah, signs, and I want to see if I can find, some. Let's go. No King's Day. right? Many of these protests, they had signs. I'm going to my ex, where they were out there marching and it was about ICE. It was about ICE and immigration. So I kind of want to go and show some clips from. Okay, let me go ahead and share screen. All right, let's go to. All right, so. All right, here we go. I didn't realize I was already streaming. All right, let me use this one here. Okay, so like this. All right, so look at some of the signs, right? Like if we go through here, you'll see even with lipstick, something a felon. We don't do kings in America, right? These are general stuff. Fuck fascism. Stop the Nazis. Can I play this slow? Let's keep going. This is not the way to. Is that two twos to treat our people? This is not how to something our allies. Okay. May everyone know love and freedom and safety. Okay, cool. Make America a democracy again. Okay, cool. No kings, no tyrants. Woman, life, freedom, Zan Zendegi Azadi. Okay. This flag here, I think it's a Mexican flag. I don't know. Some flags you see, right? You see some flags as well, right? So, again, a good amount of people that came out in various places. And so, like I said, it was the overall protests that were taking place. But then again, it had the undertone of a lot of ICE related, immigration related stuff because of the protests that happened earlier this week, right? I want to show you one video in particular. I think I actually bookmarked it because it was so fascinating. Did I bookmark it? No. Maybe I just retweeted or something. Okay, this one here. So this video here, I want you to listen and pay attention. Remember when I spoke earlier about the need for us to like get more politically educated, to get to read more, to learn more about history, to read bills and everything, and to learn how government works. I'm gonna play this clip here from this young lady.
Lavora Vincent.
And how do I spell it?
Lavorabinceent.
Perfect. And then how old are you?
I'm 18 years old.
And are you a resident of Atlanta, or what would you say?
I am resident of Metro Atlanta.
Awesome. And do you go to school out here?
Yes, I do. I'm a student at Kennesaw State University.
18 years old, a student at a university, right? So this is kind of the prime liberal Democrat voter. This is kind of that base, right? Again, and 18 years old in university, and a member of the actual community. A lot of times with these protests, people come in from outside, but no, she's from where she is right now. Let's go ahead and let's continue.
Tell me a little about what made you come out here today and be surrounded by other hundreds of people that are here today.
I think the answer is really obvious. These are my countrymen. This is my country. And my entire life, I was told that I have the right to protest, that I have a right to care. and I do care. And not only do I have a right, it's my duty. It's my duty to care about what's going on. It's my duty to stand up. People have been talking about injustice since this country was built. This country was built on injustices. We killed Native Americans, then we built it off the backs of slaves. And they want to talk about how reparations, and that's just, it happened 100 years ago and we shouldn't talk about it. We see the effects today.
Now, again, I mentioned it is very important for us to read, to learn history, to learn to make ourselves informed voters. What this young woman here is speaking about, I strongly suspect that she is actually not speaking on things that she actually read deeply, right? Or researched deeply. I suspect this is not the case, right? What she's doing is she's parroting, slogans, things that she has heard growing up, where she's growing up, right? During her teenage years, during her formative years, and now, she's in front of the camera, she's protesting, and she mentioned that America was founded on injustice, right? Now, let's tackle that part right there. The founding of America, right, absolutely was founded like in blood to a certain degree. Founded in blood, founded through various confrontations with Native Americans. That is very true. It is true. We also know about the American slave trade. That part is true as well. But where the information to me is a little bit disingenuous or incomplete is the fact that at this point in time, at that point in history, these were the rules of engagement amongst almost all populations, or at least all large nation states. And even if we talk about the Native Americans were like, we speak about Native Americans as if they were all kind of one group of people, number one, and they were all like these tree hugging people who would cry and there was no violence, and that is just not true. Native American tribes would war with each other all the time. It happened all the time. And again, that's not to like shit on the Native Americans, because sometimes what happens, like, people will go hyperbolic and they'll like refer to the natives as savages, or no, they weren't savages. They were engaging in tribal warfare, which happened everywhere. It happened in Africa. Part of the slave trade narrative that gets left out is the fact that the slaves that were brought to America weren't captured by like whites. They were traded for. They were already enslaved by other Africans and traded to the settlers for various crops and goods and spices and whatever they were trading back then, right? That was the way people engaged with each other, right? Slavery, warfare, right? Warring tribes, warring nation states, right? The world is violent now. Again, we're going to get to Iran and Israel and all that stuff later, right? So if the world is violent now, you don't understand how violent it was back then. Apparently, the world was not like it was everywhere. This frustrates me because it's like America gets put in this position of we committed some like irredeemable actions and behaviors, and to me, I think that it's just so unfair, right? Like, why do Americans, especially Americans that are Democrat voters on the left, why do we hold America to this to like this irredeemable place, right? Oh, America, you engage in slavery. America, you killed Native Americans. You are irredeemable. You will never be able to kind of stand on any type of moral high ground or anything like that because of how your founding. But no other place has to kind of deal with that stain, right? You don't talk about the Native Americans and say, hey, natives, right? Maybe if you weren't engaging in tribal warfare with each other, kidnapping each other, raping each other, killing each other, right? you should maybe if you weren't engaged in that behavior, right, like you'd have a moral place to stand on in critiquing, America, right? Or we don't say to the African tribes that captured the other African tribes and traded them to the white settlers. We don't say, hey, right, like they're responsible for the plight of Africa today, right? We don't do that, right? It's like we allow these other groups and whatever the grace or the we're knowledgeable enough to judge their actions based off of the time, which to me is what you're supposed to do, right? Like if you're trying to um create an action, like, to give a proper narrative, if you're trying to be as honest and as fair as possible when talking about historical events, you have to talk about them in the context of the times. If you're asking me, I think to do anything else other than that is actually problematic, and you're kind of engaging in um, uh, misleading people because the context of the time, those things matter. You have to kind of, people have to know, okay, yes, this happened, slavery happened, but in a world where everyone has slaves, it's actually kind of, admirable to a certain degree that, America and many places in the West were the earliest places that actually went against slavery as a practice, right? Saying if this was extremely immoral and, ended slavery, for the most part, to the point now that most of us today view slavery as the abhorrent and problematic practice that it is, instead of what it was before then, which was kind of standard practice, how everyone got down. And when I say everyone, I mean everyone, everyone, everywhere. Like the word slave is from Slavic, right? The Slavics, which they're not black, right? They're white. Were often enslaved, unfortunately. So again, we have this bothers me because these narratives are pushed out there to serve a purpose, which is to destabilize and to turn us against our own country. Again, absolutely, America. We had the American slave trade, horrific practice. And when we tell the story of America, you have to, and this is kind of my response to Republicans and conservatives, because they don't like to acknowledge things that actually did happen because they think it makes the country look bad. But to me, we have to tell the truth. Yes, the American slave trade happened. It was horrific. The fact that we ever thought it was cool to own other human beings as property is horrific, right? But right. So yes, the conservative and the Republican has to tell that truth. But the Democrat and the liberal has to be honest about the fact that, yes, slavery, though, this was common amongst various countries, various groups across the globe. And anyone not telling you that truth is purposely trying to manipulate you into hating your own country. We have too many people, especially on the left, especially on the Democratic side, that they actually despise America. They want the American project to fall. They want the country to fall, or they want a revolution, not realizing that revolutions are often tied to body counts, death. Give me all of these revolutions that you are aware of where a great amount of human suffering and carnage was not a part of the revolution. There aren't many. Like I'm sure some exist, right? Like it would have to exist. I'm sure some exist. It would have to exist, but it ain't the majority. It ain't many. And so when people try to push this, we need a revolution. We need a revolution into your minds. You kind of have to think, okay, what are the costs, right? Like a revolution is kind of all you need to kind of, bring these great changes these great changes to society. How come we aren't revolting all the time? I'll tell you what. It's because they come at a great cost. At a great cost. And that needs to be remembered. But let's continue listening to what this young lady had to say.
America America was built on bigotry. America was built on hate. And it doesn't have to be that way. I do not live in a country. I do not pay tax dollars to murder innocent people. These are people. This is a country for us. This is a country of my parents and my children and my neighbors. And this is a country of immigrants. The colonials did not pay thousands of dollars. They did not wait 8 years to have citizenship. They didn't do that.
Okay, now let's go back. This is a country founded on hate. Like, this stuff blows my mind, and it's so frustrating. Like, it's so frustrating. This is a country founded on hate. This was not a country founded on hatred. It wasn't. Again, I'll give you the American slave. And again, I'm African American. I'm not African. I'm not Jamaican. One day, me and my family, and I wish I was paying more attention. You know, I'm not gonna lie to you. I was kind of like doing my own thing, but I was there. We were on like a large Zoom call, and they were going through the lineage, kind of, you know, going through our lineage and going through our documents and everything. And we were able to trace our lineage all the way back to a slave, and I think her last name was Dot or Dots, right? Which of course she got from the slave owner that purchased her, right? So again, I'm not talking in this abstract, you know, thing, and I don't want you to think that I have dark skin, but maybe I'm not, you know, an actual African. No, I'm an African American FBA, ADOS, whatever you want to call it, right? Like, we've been here. But again, it's just not true that this country was founded on hate. It was not. It was not. And like, who is putting this out there? It wasn't. Let me put myself a little bit bigger real quick. Right? Like, this country was not founded on hate. Like, this frustrates me to no end. It was not founded on hate. It was founded by individuals who were escaping persecution, right? They were escaping religious persecution. They were escaping political persecution. First and primary, they wanted self-determination. They wanted self-governance, because when they left and they landed here in North America, they eventually became their own people, right? Like, and that's what really happened, right? They were separated from the crown, right? Separated from the crown, living amongst themselves. And when you do that, when you are so far removed from a place, and you have to kind of work the land yourself. You have to deal with the problems, your own problems, right? Like, the crown wasn't sending a bunch of people to come over here and help us with all our problems. No, we had to cultivate the land. We had to establish, like, certain systems and norms and et cetera, right? And so the individuals here, they founded the country because they wanted to be free of and free from the crown. That's what they wanted. This country was not founded on hate. Again, blood, violence. You can find that attached to the foundation of almost every country that exists today, including the ones that are majority brown and majority black. Like, I know y'all got it in your mind that that America was founded by quote unquote white people, and so it is evil, right? Because it was founded by white people. That's not the case. Again, it's not the case. Like, I urge you to read the Declaration of Independence, read the Constitution, read the other documents and books that were written by the founding fathers before the war. Like, I just finished reading you know what? It's I'm gonna find this, because most of you don't know that Benjamin Franklin, when he was 16 years old, he prepared and he wrote a series of essays that he, hold on, let me go to my, yes. He wrote a series of essays that he kind of sent to a newspaper. Yeah. In 1772, it was called the Silence Duga letters, right? And these were a series of letters, often called like humorous letters, published in the New England Courant, right, under a pseudonym, which Benjamin Franklin wrote, that was critiquing many aspects of colonial society. He was like 16 years old when he wrote these, most of these letters. And if you read them, he was making points about how, education should go to like people that are actually, smart, not simply the rich and the wealthy. He spoke about how we should be educating women, how men view women as vain and things like that, but really men are just as vain, and if women are vain, it's because of the behaviors of men. Like you don't realize how much, the society that they founded might not have been the society we have today or the one that you wanted, right? And I'll grant you, you could even say that it was unfair to a certain degree, right? But these individuals were a lot more sophisticated, and they had a variety of thoughts and a variety of opinions that you are not made aware of because you have not been led to engage with a lot of this literature. And they fan the flames of the anti-American, the anti-America rhetoric, because eventually the country will fall apart, right? You can't have a country filled with people who hate the country. Ah, you can't do it. You can't do it. And too many individuals, especially on the Democratic side, especially on the left, you despise the country, you hate the country, you think the country in and of itself is problematic. You think that what would serve us best is for America to fall. And I'm trying to implore to you, as best as I can right now, that this would be a mistake. This would be a huge mistake. The fall of America would cause so much death. It would cause so much carnage. It would cause so much mayhem. So much, right? That when we finally were able to put the pieces back together, and we were on the other side, there would be so much death and destruction and misery and pain and suffering that it'll take us lifetimes to recover from. Let's go back and listen to the rest of this video here.
I am not going to sit here while my people suffer.
Oh, before I forget, let's go back here. Hold on. Right here.
Of my parents and my children and my neighbors. This is a country of immigrants. The colonials did not pay thousands of dollars. They did not wait 8 years to have citizenship. They didn't do that.
All right. So this talking point also annoys me. Again, the belief that because things didn't happen a certain way before, that it shouldn't happen now. I don't understand how people like can have this line of thinking, right? Like, she just started off saying that right, like the country is founded on hate, right? And that they killed the natives, right? Meaning that's kind of the behavior that they were engaging in at that time back then. I'm sure she wouldn't say, well, they killed people back then, so we should be allowed to kill people now. Of course not. She's critical from her perspective of the actions that took place in this country back towards the founding, right? And she believes from her perspective that we should be doing things different now. Yet here she's making the argument that, because the founders or, during the settling of this country, they didn't wait 8 years for citizenship, that or pay, you know, a bunch of money, that the individuals here shouldn't do that now. That's just not like smart logic. Like, there's no A to B there. There's no A to B, right? And I could be in agreement because, again, I don't think you should have to pay a bunch of money to become a citizen, to be quite frankly, right? I think we should decide citizenship based off of A, what is in the best interest of America, and also of the citizens, right? So not what's in the best interest of corporations. No. We decide, us as citizens, how many immigrants that we want, what type of immigrants that we want, right? I would like people that are contributors to the system, not people that take from the system, right? I read somewhere that California spends around $30 billion on illegal immigration. These things matter to me, right? And so if she wants to be critical of the immigration process, I think she should be. And she might actually get some agreement from me because, again, I'm like, I don't want a whole bunch of hoops of people to jump through that are unnecessary for citizenship. I would like for us to decide, hey, we need these people for these industries or whatever. Let's let some people in that we feel like will be good for these various industries, right? But I would like to know who's in my country, who's coming into my country, how they feel about democracy, how they feel about the founding fathers. Are they aware about the founding fathers, right? Will they fight for the country, right? All of these things matter to me in determining, okay, who we allow as citizens in the country. And I don't think that is unfair or that is too much to ask. I think any, again, reasonable country has borders. They don't just allow people to walk their way into the country and right, with the expectation that because they've been here illegally for some time, that the government will grant them amnesty, make them citizens. I think that is totally backwards. Totally backwards. So again, her logic is just, like, it's not working for me. It's not working for me. But let's go back to the rest of the video.
I am not going to sit here while my people suffer.
What do you think about the president? I know currently in D.C. he's having a birthday party sort of parade. What do you think about that as you guys are protesting here and in other cities across the country?
I can remember in 2016 all the propaganda that was put out on North Korea and how they had a show for Kim Jong-un's birthday and all the rockets that they displayed and the nuclear weapons. And the West took that as an insult and kind of a threat. Well, I see absolutely no difference in what's happening in D.C. right now. It's an absolute waste of tax dollars in any kind of way that you can put it.
All right, now look. Some of my Republican friends and conservative friends will be, a little bit mad when I say this, but I'm with on this one. Trump should have never thrown this little military parade. Number one, a lot of people didn't show up to that parade. It was very empty. I don't know the exact number, but I know it was millions of tax dollars that went towards putting this all together. And for so little people to show up, for it to not really be covered by the media, it was just not worth the money. And when you're, and when you're speaking on and running on government waste, which you ran on, and cutting things, and we waste so much money, which I think we do waste a lot of money for government. I don't think it was the best idea to have a parade in which no one really came except you and your people, and not even all his people. I think more people showed up to his to January 6th than showed up to this. Again, I don't have side by side crowd pictures, but from what I saw yesterday in the videos, this was a waste. So I'm with her. I'm with homegirl on this one. Totally with her on this one.
Threat. It's a threat to the American people that says if you step out of line, we will destroy you. We will take everything you love away. And I'm not going to stand for that. This is America, and you are nothing without the American people. And I want you to know that.
Anything else you can think of you'd like to add or mention?
If you're not angry, you're not listening. You need to be aware. It is your civic duty to care about what's going on. I don't care if you're Democratic or Republican. You have a constitution that sets freedom of speech. You have a constitution that sets freedom of the press. You have a living document that lives and breathes for the people. And that man is using it in corrupt, demonic ways. And he wants to talk about how the LGBTQ, how black communities, how POCs, how immigrants are the devil. That's only one devil I can see, and he sits in the White House. You should be angry. You should be out here with us. They don't care about you. These people, and you should show them, all of these people out here. These are the people. This is their country. This Capitol building, people are supposed to come here and represent us. And they won't. So I will represent me. Yes. That's what I have to say. Yes.
So, and first of all, I apologize for the loud music. You know, they out there just doing their thing. I have the windows closed too, by the way. So, if you hear some music coming from outside, again, I do very much apologize. Um, uh, um, to wrap up that video, she mentioned something that I kind of wanted to get into real quick. Which was part of this video that I definitely wanted to hammer home before we move on to Israel and Iran, which was intersectionality, right? She mentioned, you know, the LGBTQ community, the black community, you know, various communities, the immigrant community, and there have been many conversations right now about what should the black community's response or how we should be feeling about the ICE raids and, you know, illegal immigration, and should we get involved? Should we not get involved? This is where I think we have to have a conversation about intersectionality and how I think it is largely probably stupid, right? And intersectionality in and of itself isn't a good or a bad thing. It really just means, you know, the fact that oftentimes various different communities or various different interest groups have shared interest in certain things, and so if you can find commonalities, that it is worth banding together and supporting one another because you are stronger together than you are apart, right? That's kind of the foundation of the intersectionality perspective, so to speak, right? Which again is not necessarily wrong. The problem is people often forget the part about shared interest, shared values, commonalities, right? Meaning you don't just support for the sake of supporting. You kind of support because you have these shared interests, shared values, shared goals, etc., etc. And what I'm asking black people is, as it pertains to illegal immigration, right? For what reason are we against the ICE raids? No, put the ICE raids aside, because you could be against the ICE raids and against illegal immigration, right? That is true. So let's focus on one issue and then let's tackle the other, right? If we just focused on illegal immigration, right? If you are a black person, and again, when I talk about black people, I'm almost always referring to that FBA ADOS lineage, right? Meaning you are a black American and you can trace your lineage to a slave, right? So you are a descendant of a slave. I'm talking about black Africans, black Caribbeans, or their offsprings. They are now black people in this current conversation, right? If you are an African American, FBA ADOS, right? A Negro, as I like to use the word, right? I think we need to reclaim Negro, but that's a separate conversation. If you are a black person, why are you pro illegal immigration, right? Outside of the fact that we have been convinced by too many of our leaders, whether that's the Congressional Black Caucus, the NAACP, that you know, we have been convinced that we have this shared interest with this other group because their skin color is closer to ours than, you know, white people. What about the issue of illegal immigration do you think actually works in your favor? Because I don't see any any hints that this works in our favor as African Americans, right? And again, I'm just being honest. I'm calling it, straight, as best as I can. I'm calling it straight. I don't see where this is in like our interest here, right? I don't see how it's in our economic interest, right? Many of us, unfortunately, we are not, contrary to popular belief, we are not doing what needs to be done as it pertains to education, getting the proper degrees in the various fields that we need to be economically attractive to various industries. Right? Some of us are, and that's great, but many of us are not. And again, I'm talking about me, right? I have some college. I have yet. I don't have an associate's degree. I don't have a bachelor's degree. I've gone to school. Maybe one day I will actually get the actual paperwork because I'm able to kind of sit still and I have ADHD problems. But yeah, I don't have the paperwork, right? I've been blessed to kind of stumble my way into a pretty decent full-time job. But outside of that, again, if I lost that, I probably will be in a place where I'm getting paid probably what I would deem to be below what I'm worth because I don't have the paperwork, right? And unfortunately, too many of us don't have the paperwork in the proper fields to kind of feel good about, oh, you know what? If these illegal immigrants come in, it's fine. But we're not battling for the same jobs. No, we have that. We are battling with these individuals for the same jobs, right? They don't just work agriculture, right? They work agriculture. They work in the restaurant industry. They work in the hospitality industry, right? Hotels, home caretakers, right? Various places and industries that we work or we need to be working as people who, may not have the proper credentials, but we are good workers, we are hard workers, et cetera, right? So how does letting in and allowing a bunch of illegal immigrants coming to the country to compete with us for these jobs, how does that enrich our lives or make our lives better or easier as Americans? I don't see it. I don't think it does. In fact, I think if you are honest with yourself as you watch this live or this video, when I clip it up, when I clip it up and put it out, it doesn't make your life easy at all, right? So there's that angle. There's the second angle of this that needs to be discussed, honestly, right? Which is language. Language. Do you know why I live in New York City? I work around mostly non-black people, right? In fact, in my department, right, my immediate coworkers are black, right? But supervisor is white, manager is white, other manager is Asian, her manager is white, right? Again, it gets wider and wider and less black the higher you go, right? And again, I'm not complaining about anything. It is what it is, right? I'm gonna have a job, so to speak. So there's no complaining from my vantage point. But again, language. That's what I was doing, right? I bring this up because white people actually enjoy hiring black people a lot of the times because A, they get to prove that they're not racist, right? Two, many of them have sympathy for us, right? The white guilt thing, right? Just keeping it real, so they hire us, right? And three, contrary to popular belief, a good black worker is actually a very good worker. I'm a good worker, right? I'm a good worker, and partially because the reason why we make good workers, we are concerned about the stereotypes of black workers, and so we go out of our way to make sure that we don't in any way, shape, or form fulfill any of these negative stereotypes. For example, I have taken Ubers to work, right? Paying $30, $40, right? Because I did not want to show up 5 to 10 minutes late. Why? Because of the stereotype that black people be showing up late. I hate being late. I'm not disrespectful. I go out of my way to kind of like control myself and to make sure that I'm like a team player and to, go above and beyond and help people. Why? Because of the stereotype. So again, good black workers are actually great workers, right? And so again, white people actually enjoy hiring us. Unfortunately, most of us are employed by white people. And you know why we're able to be employed by white people? The reason why we're able to be employed by white people is because we share language with them. What do I mean? Here's why this is important. One of the things that is often talked about, if you like talk to a lot of black people who are, anti-America, or they hate the country, they'll bring up a true point, which is that we came and we adopted the white man's religion, the white man's language, and all of that stuff, and they're right, right? Like, if slavery didn't happen, I'd have been in some country over there in Africa speaking a language that is not English, right? But because of slavery, I'm here with you all. I speak pretty bad English, but good enough for me to make these lives and speak with you guys, right? Right? It is what it is. Because I share the same language, though, even though I am black and my employers are white, we can communicate with each other, and so we can work together. You cannot do that with people who don't speak English. You can't do it. They don't speak English. It is impossible, for the most part, to work together in an effective manner if you don't share language, right? If you are proficient in English and this person is not proficient in English, it is going to be very difficult for you two to work together or for you to work for this person, right? Why am I bringing this up? There are many people that are Spanish. I have Spanish friends, and they are bilingual, meaning they speak Spanish fluently and they speak English fluently, right? My guy Miguel, my friend Miguel, shout out to Miguel, right? I don't realize Miguel don't speak that Miguel speaks Spanish until I'm around him and he likes to speak Spanish. Otherwise, I just assume that Miguel speaks English, like like he's one of my homies, right? And there are many people that are Hispanic, Spanish, whatever whatever way you want, whatever term you use, right? And you will never know that they speak Spanish, or put it like this: even if you know it, their English is so good it doesn't matter. And when you're working together, we're all speaking English. When you have a large number of people, illegal immigrants that come into the country, right, rapidly over a period of time, in large enough quantities, they don't have to change their language. You have to learn their language, right? I want to do something here real quick because I heard this was true, but I'm not sure, and I want to spread fake news. And again, I use my laptop, so apologies in advance about it shaking. But let's find out something. Matter of fact, let me go ahead and what language is spoken the most in California? Sorry. Right. California is the largest state by population with about 39 million residents. The majority of people residing in the state do speak English. Now watch this. What percentage of California speaks Spanish? 28.18%. It's the second most commonly spoken language in California after English. Right? 28 so over a quarter of the population in California speaks Spanish, right? Most black people are not bilingual. Right? Most of us are not bilingual, even though we all take Spanish when we're in high school, which again is already a sign of things changing, right? We speak English. There is no other language for us to speak. It's just English, right? And so people that speak bilingual, right? They speak Spanish and English. They have a leg up on us in the workforce. Why? Because they speak Spanish and they speak English while we only speak English. So it doesn't matter how good of a worker you are, how well you are, with the computers, right? Someone who is bilingual, they do all of that and they speak Spanish. And so if you're an employer and you're looking to hire the best employee, then what? You hire the employee that does all of that other shit and they speak Spanish, right? This way, I don't have to hire someone who just speaks Spanish or who speaks both languages as an interpreter. No. My workforce here speaks English and Spanish, right? Now, let's go back here. Let's go back here. What percentage of the United States speak Spanish? 13%. And as you see here, and that number continues to grow. Additionally, the U.S. is home to nearly 12 million bilingual Spanish speakers. So again, this 13%, so 41 million people speak Spanish as a first language in America. So this is not even counting the 12 million bilinguals. If you add that to this number, now we are talking about 53 million that speak Spanish. Again, this is not anti them. They're not doing anything wrong, right? So to speak, right? But we are allowing ourselves, we are encouraging ourselves to be replaced to a certain degree by individuals who make us less effective at getting jobs, getting employment, right? We will be at the oh boy, I need to expand my language because this is the word that I'm looking for that I can't, that's not hitting my mind right now. We will be at a disadvantage. It's not the word, but whatever. A great disadvantage in the marketplace if this continues as African Americans, right? Because we only speak English, right? Now, again, the masses determine what the laws are. You are ignorant and you are short-sighted if you believe because people who are Spanish or Hispanic are the minority now that it will continue to be this way unless something changes. It won't. It won't. And once you get a certain number of individuals, you no longer have to learn English. You don't need to. If everyone in your store speaks Spanish, then guess what? People who come into your store, they either speak Spanish or they don't get served. Now, as a manager of a store, you might think it's important for them to speak a certain level of English because you want the business, right? Like when I go into the Spanish store to get some boneless fried chicken and some rice and beans or rice and peas, whatever, right? These people don't speak great English. They speak English good enough to get my money, right? Because that's all that they need. But other than that, they speak Spanish to each other. They speak Spanish to the other people that speak Spanish around me. I don't know what's going on. And so again, I'm wondering why, if you're a black person, how in God's name you think this is working in the best interest of you simply because their skin color is closer to ours than white people. Which leads me to the last point, or the next point. I don't know if it's my last point or not. The next point in all of this. If you are a black person who believes that white supremacy is this huge issue, right? That white supremacy is an issue, that white people are the enemy, whatever, right? Y'all know how y'all be talking, right? If you genuinely believe that white supremacy is the greatest ill in society, cool. Are you underneath the impression that if you got rid of the white people in America, right? So if you got rid of all white Americans, are you seriously under the impression that the black American will do better in a society where we are a minority amongst a minority amongst people who are not white than we are a minority with white people as the majority? Again, remember what I kind of brought up, the fact that because of white guilt, because white people don't want to be accused of being racist, right? And because white people, are a lot of them are Christian, right? They employ us. They might not want us to be in their position, but they have no problem assisting us, right? You think that's the case if you got rid of white people and you're left with Mexicans and Cubans and Chinese and Japanese and Indian and like, are you really under that impression? Yeah, African and like Jamaican, like again, black people, ADOS, FBA, descendants of slaves. Are you under the impression that if you remove white people from America and you're left with just Latin Americans, African migrants and immigrants, Asian Americans, do you believe that that our lives, our communities would actually see an improvement because we've gotten rid of all of the white people? Because again, I don't. Like, if you remove the fact that their skin color might be closer to ours, what else do we have in common? We don't share language. We don't share religion. Most of you are Christian. We don't share culture, right? Like, we were here almost as long or just as long as white people who could trace their ancestors back to the founders as well. What do we share with these other groups? And again, this is not anti them. They're coming to America because America, contrary to what y'all want to believe, black people, is not this super oppressive, horrible society to live in comparison to the rest of the world. We actually offer many resources, chances to climb out, to reinvent yourself. You can move a lot socially, economically in America in ways that you can't in most places around the world on this planet. That's why they come here. That's why. So this is not anti-them. They're doing what's in the best interest of them, their people, their family, their communities, etc., etc. I'm asking us, are we doing that? Or are we going along with this intersectionality? We need to stand with the brown people. Why? Again, I'm just asking you. I'm begging you, actually. Begging you. Please, just for a second, actually sit down and think about this. After Africans was happening over in Africa, with all of the Chinese going over there. After dark-skinned Spanish people in the Dominican Republic, after Haitians. Right? Like, I just think we are signing up and attaching ourselves to this pro-immigration movement, but no one can explain to me who's black how this is in our benefit at all. At all. So, yeah, that's how I'm gonna leave this. I feel good now that I'm talking for a while. I feel like I'm in my element. So that's where I land on the immigration stuff. Again, now if there's one thing I will say about that young woman here, right? Again, I disagree with her. I think she's getting bad information. I think it's a sign that really, if you're a parent, you have to actually take a control over the education that your children get. Like, you really have to kind of take a reins, because the schools ain't going to give them the proper education. Give them a fair education. Yeah, America has some dark shit. Like, we put Asians in internment camps. That's dark. We nuked Japan. That's dark. We have stuff that we should absolutely be like, that was horrendous, and we should never do that or go there ever again, right? But as far as the core and like the ideology and how we were founded, we were not founded on hate. Slavery was a problem across the globe during that time, which does not make the American slave trade any less horrific, because it was horrific. We should condemn it, but we should keep it in context, right? That's all I'm saying. All right, let's move on to matter of fact, one more thing I want to try to do before I move on actually is I want to try and see if I can find if I can find some videos from Trump's parade. Trump parade. Because this is what's sad. All right, yeah, like this one here. Again, I don't know why Trump. Look at this. And you know, salute to who came out, but look at this. Trump, and also it was like rainy. Trump, whenever Trump want to throw these things, he always get bad weather. Like whenever he wants to have some type of party out there in DC, listen, whoever he pissed off up there, like you know, they're like, no, absolutely not. So, I do agree that this you know that parade, yeah. All right, now Israel and Iran. Mm-mm-mm. Israel and Iran. So as you all know, there was a uh, there was a according to Israel, they preemptively struck Iran, a fear that Iran was close to developing a nuclear weapon that I guess Israel is afraid they will use to bomb Israel. And you know, so they preemptively. I that's such an interesting term of phrasing, a preemptive strike, because really, all you're saying is, yeah, we kind of bombed them first, which is what happened, right? Like, you don't know that they were going to move on you. You don't know anything really. What you know is you decided, you know what? Let me go ahead and bomb these people. So they struck Iran, and then like there's some information about whether or not you know Donald Trump and you know was in on it. Did he know? Was he like according to Israel? They're saying that Trump knew about the strike, but he kind of pretended like he was working towards an agreement to kind of keep the Iranian leaders off guard so that they wouldn't like leave or think you know suspect anything. And then Israel was able to kind of you know wipe them out with their missiles, as far as a lot of the top brass and you know things like that. Um, and you know, a lot of people are talking about what does this mean? Does this mean that America will be dragged into a war? Does this mean that we should expect for you know troops on the ground, or are we just a part of the defensive action as far as defending Israel, or are we part of the offensive action as it pertains to you know dropping bombs on Iran? Is this a part of America first? And you know, my first thought when I'm absorbing all of this, right, is this. And I called my father called me yesterday. Me and him spoke. You know, we were catching up like we usually do, and we started talking about what's happening with Iran and Israel, right? And I'm like, I don't know how if you are a country watching what's happening with Iran or even Ukraine. I don't know how you don't look around and and like your thought is not, I need to get my hands on a nuclear bomb as soon as possible. Like yesterday, I need a bomb right now. How is that not your takeaway when you're looking at everything happening as it pertains to Ukraine getting invaded by Russia, Iran getting preemptively struck by Israel, right? Because if you don't have a nuclear weapon, and I'm gonna just keep it real, you don't have a real country from my vantage point. You don't have control over how you govern. You don't have control over your borders for the most part. You don't have control over your resources. You have no control over what you're doing because you have no real deterrent against somebody else who has these nuclear weapons to do what they want to do to you. Right? And this is not me speaking in defense of Iran. I know nothing about Iran. I know nothing about. I hear that they're an oppressive regime. It would not, you know, like shock me really. Any country that kind of makes their women wear them things or you know on their body all day long is probably an oppressive regime. I got you. And if some facts come out and then like, oh no, they're way more effed up than that, I probably agree. But that's a separate point. I'm just saying, if you're watching, like Iran, their takeaway from this has to be we need to get our hands on a nuke as soon as possible. How is their takeaway from this going to be we should not get our hands on a nuke? Because they don't have a nuclear weapon right now. They don't. And they keep getting bombed. I'm not saying that they ain't out here doing mischievous things, which they probably are. But I know for a fact that Israel wouldn't be bombing them if they actually had a nuke. Suddenly, you have to engage with diplomacy, and you have to kind of behave in a certain way, right? Russia, I don't believe would have ran up into Ukraine if Ukraine had a nuke, right? You need nukes. You need nukes. None of this to me is kind of leading us towards a denuclear future. If anything, you need a nuke as soon as possible. I think every country, if your country or the leader of your country isn't talking about the need for us to get nukes as soon as possible, I don't know if you are living in the right country. You need a nuclear weapon. Otherwise, you are at the behest of a country that has a nuclear weapon. So it is what, you know what I'm saying? And how can you trust these people? Like, again, Trump was in like talks to get a deal done, and then now Israel is saying that he was actually lying and make sure that y'all stayed put so we could bomb you. If you're Iran, why would you trust America's word ever again? In fact, if you're any other country who deals with America, at least for the next 3 years, why would you trust anything these people have to say? Now, if it was me, it wouldn't even matter if Trump was out of office. I'm not putting the fate of my country in the hands of another country. I believe personally, a country that cannot defend itself probably shouldn't exist. And I know that sounds harsh, but I just don't understand what other function can you serve if you can't fight off enemies and keep me safe, right? Like, why not just combine with our neighboring country here and hope that we can kind of make something happen? So I think this Israel strike on Iran makes the world much less safe and much more likely to pursue nuclear weaponry because, again, why would you not? So that's how I feel about that. But then there's a larger point that I want to discuss here, which is the fact that I don't think people are actually having the right conversation when it pertains to why so many American politicians have a undying loyalty to Israel. And it is undying. Sorry, I hit my water. It is undying. And I'm going to tell you the truth as to behind why there seems to be a large number of politicians on the left and the right that just love Israel. They can't think of a world without Israel. They must support Israel for as long as possible. Throughout whatever type of war or action that they take, we have to stand with Israel. We must stand with Israel. We love Israel. Israel, Israel, Israel. There's a reason, and it has nothing to do with politics, APAC, or whatever these other leftist news organizations be telling you. I don't think it's that. At least for most of them. Now, are some of the politicians driven by APAC and whatever, and some it's the industrial military complex. Israel is our ally in the Middle East, so we get to kind of share information and stuff. So they think it's in the best interest of America. Yada 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 yada. That's not the real story, right? And I tweeted this, and I tweeted it at various what I would consider to be left-wing media sources. And I'm gonna see if I can find my tweet, because I tweeted it like Secular Talk, Kyle Kalinske, Cenk Uygur, some other people too, because I don't hear this part discussed nearly enough. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Here we go. All right. This is what I tweeted. As someone who used to be religious, I don't think many Americans are aware that a good reason for the undying support for Israel is driven solely by religious faith and Christian doctrine. There is a belief that Jews are a chosen people whom Christians must support and honor if they want to be viewed favorably in the eyes of God. Israel exploits this belief routinely to manipulate the American government. Some are pro war in our government because they believe that that war will bring about the second coming of Jesus Christ. In the book of Revelation, war and rumors of war are mentioned as signs of the second coming. I think independent news outlets that are run by people like Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparian, Crystal Ball, Kyle Kalinske, Kim Iverson Show, and Sagar, sorry, should spend some time discussing everything I just laid out. Most Americans who self-identify as Christians have never read the Bible, so I doubt Americans who aren't religious have read it. They need to understand this angle if they want to understand why it seems most Democrats and Republicans have such strong support for Israel. I know discussing what I have laid out may cause some of you to step into uncomfortable waters, but it needs to be done. That's what and I tweeted that. And of course, they didn't respond. I'm a nobody. But again, this is an angle that needs to be discussed that few are aware of, right? So if you are not Christian, or if you are a Christian and you don't read your Bible, like most Christians don't, unfortunately, this might sound shocking to you. Like, oh, if you're a Christian, you believe that Jesus Christ was the Savior. He came and he died on the cross for our sins. And so all of us, Jew and Gentile, all of us are underneath this, like we are a part of the kingdom of God, right? And that is a belief. There is an additional belief or a separate belief, and this was kind of discussed back when Paul, the Apostle Paul, back when there was a big conversation between Paul and the other disciples about whether or not Gentiles have to obey the law, right? The Jewish law, as far as the kosher laws and the certain things, right? And Paul's belief was that no, they did not. Paul wrote multiple letters to his various churches that he started, saying that they did not need to follow the law. That it was unnecessary. That God choosing Jews, Israelites to be His people, that was just until Jesus would come, right? That is a perspective that has had that you're reading the Bible, and many Christians believe that Jews are still extremely important, and that as God's chosen people, they need to be supported, defended, protected, and Israel must and needs to exist, right? If Israel falls, right? Which again, I don't. Well, we'll get to that later, right? If Israel falls, it's not just bad for Jews in Israel; it's bad for Christians in America, Christians worldwide. Because again, Jews are God's chosen people. Israel needs to be intact. It needs to exist so that Jesus can return. Because Jesus, Israel, that is the place where all the Jews they're hoping for Jew. this is such a so it's let me see if I can find the actual verse. Hold on. Sorry about that. Okay. Which verse mentions Jews all returning to Israel? Okay, so here's some verses here. right? Let me share this. Okay, boom. Ezekiel, the 37th chapter, the 21st verse. Then say to them, thus says the Lord God, behold, I will take the people of Israel from the nations among which they have gone, and will gather them from all around and bring them to their own land. Isaiah, the 11th chapter, the 11th through the 12th verse. In that day, the Lord will extend his hand yet a second time to recover the remnant that remains of his people. He will raise a signal for the nations and will assemble the banished of Israel and gather the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. Jeremiah, the 30th chapter, the 3rd verse. For behold, days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will restore the fortunes of my people, Israel and Judah, and I will bring them back to the land that I gave to their fathers, and they shall take possession of it. Okay, these passages, this is important, have been interpreted variously. Some see them as fulfilled in ancient returns from Babylonian exile. Others view them as eschatological, future events tied to messianic expectations or end times. Christian theology may also interpret them symbolically in light of the church or spiritual Israel. So, when I mentioned that a large amount of politicians in America believe that Israel has to exist in order for the Messiah to come back, that's who I'm talking about here. Well, that's who this part is about, right? Others view them as eschatological future events tied into messianic expectations or end times, right? So these people exist, and they're rarely talked about on the Young Turks or secular talk or breaking points, whatever, right? They speak about money and politics and all that stuff. And again, I don't doubt that these actually play a large role in what's happening with American politicians in Israel. But I'm shocked a little bit that this part here, this angle, doesn't get discussed nearly enough, right? And I think personally, this needs its own episode. Like, if you're asking me, if you are, running secular talk or TYT, and they've mentioned it before, so I'm not saying that Cal hasn't mentioned it or Jenk hasn't mentioned it, right? It's been a part of conversations. I'm saying that they should do like a special or like their own episode on this angle, because this angle, I believe, it supersedes the APAC and all the other stuff. Because even if you get rid of that stuff, right? If you get APAC out of politics, if you're able to kind of dismantle the money part, right? Even if you got rid of the military industrial complex, right? So we don't have the people in our government that believe that we need Israel because they are our eyes and ears on the ground, for military purpose, right? You still will have this angle, and this angle is much harder to dismantle than the other ones because it's related to religious belief. We speak a lot about kind of the religious people on the right. There are a lot of Christians who are Democrat and who are liberal. Again, kid you not, they might not talk about it the way that they do on the right. But they walk the walk. When you kind of look at and you examine, how they speak about certain things, and you're like, what you're saying doesn't make sense. Why does Israel have a right to exist? No country has a right to exist. Countries exist because they have the military backing to ensure they exist. And most of us have come into existence because of blood, if we're being honest, right? We don't talk about countries having a right to exist in this special place in this region. Of course not, unless you're driven by religious dogma and doctrine. And this angle, I don't think many Americans are aware of, because as I stated in my tweet, most people who are Christian don't read the Bible. So I know most people who are not Christians are not aware of these biblical passages and verses and everything, that they think, oh, wait, so you telling me that politicians in my country are being driven not by logic, not by what they see on the ground or what they see around them. They're driven by scriptures. That's what they're driven by, scriptures. So there are so you have the that segment of politicians that are driven by that. Israel has to exist because the Jews have to have a homeland to come back to, because that needs to happen so that Jesus can come back, right? Then you have the other part of this, right? Which are the wars. So let me type that in. Again, sorry for the shaking camera. Scripture. Let me go ahead and go back down here. All right, let's okay. Okay, now give me scriptures about how wars and rumors of war are going to happen before the end. All right, so this is okay. So this is from Jesus in the Synoptic Gospels, right? And if you want a larger context here, uh, let's go to the actual Bible. I'm going to Bible Gateway. More scripture. Let's go to the 20. What's this? Matthew 24? Yeah, Matthew 24. All right. So this is, it says Jesus foretells the destruction of the temple. Okay, so Jesus left the temple and was going away when his disciples came to point out to him the buildings of the temple. But he answered to them, "You see all of these, do you not? Truly I say to you, there will not be left here one stone upon another that will not be thrown down." Right? And so then we get to this section here, signs of the end of the age. As he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, "Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age?" And Jesus answered them, "See that no one leads you astray. For many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and they will lead many astray. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not alarmed, for this must take place, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All of these are but the beginning of the birth pains. Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and put you to death. And you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. And then many will fall away and betray one another and hate one another. And many false prophets will arise and lead many astray. And because lawlessness will be increased, the love of many will grow cold. But the one who endures to the end will be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom will be proclaimed throughout the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. So, see what I mean? Now, granted, when you read this, of course, what isn't mentioned here is the fact that Jesus was talking to his disciples about all these things that these things would happen, but the disciples all dead, right? All the disciples died. These things haven't happened. If you're a Christian, you read these verses, and we've been kind of trained to read them from the perspective as, oh, Jesus was talking to them, but he was really talking to us, right? Now, I don't know why Jesus would do that, but put that to the side. If you believe these scriptures, what did I just read? That these things must happen. So this sounds crazy. I know it does, but just again, I just read it. Listen to me. I don't know what number it is, but a good chunk of our politicians who are both Republican and Democrat. Again, I know Democrats and libs think that this is just right-wing stuff. No, you have many Christians that are also in the Democratic Party that are liberals. They might not be as vocal as the Republicans, but I'm telling you, they think that the wars need to happen, right? If you're wondering why they're acting in a way that almost ensures more war, it's because they want more war. The war is the point. That's the point no one is talking about. The war is the point. They want the wars. They want the rumors of the wars. Why? Because they believe that these are the things that, Jesus is coming back now. And I just don't, this needs to be discussed. Cenk Uygur, Kyle Kalinske, Crystal Ball, like If you're not talking about this part here, I personally think you are doing your audiences a disservice. And I think you guys do a great job. Again, I'm not a liberal. I don't agree with all of the policies and stuff. But on the war issue, we are in lockstep on this specific issue. And again, you are doing your audiences a disservice if you don't have an episode dedicated to this point specifically. That's what I'm saying. It can't be a part of a larger conversation. It can't be a part of, let's talk, just give 2-3 minutes. No. This deserves the same 10, 15-minute episodes that y'all put out sometimes about money and politics and stuff. And maybe you're uncomfortable talking about the scriptures. Maybe bring on a biblical scholar or something like that. But this angle here has to be discussed. It has to be, because it's driving too many of our politicians. They want the war. The war is the point. That's the point. And so when they're behaving in a way where you're like, this seems like it's going to cause more problems. The problem is the point. I feel like I'm going crazy. They want the problem. They want the problem. They want the war, the bombings, the bloodshed, the death. I know it sounds crazy to you, right? It sounds crazy to me. I said before, I'm in the middle of a Christian deconversion. I've been raised Christian all my life. The past couple of years, I decided I wanted to read the Bible front to back. I didn't read all of the Bible yet, right? I got to Isaiah, I started to get confused, so I skipped to the New Testament. But all these verses that I just put in this video, as far as Jesus that I just put up, I read those. And I was reading it like, okay, right? And maybe there was like a cognitive dissonance thing going on where I'm reading these things, but you don't really know what you're reading. And it's like, war that needs to happen. It has to happen. And again, Jesus, in his time, now of course, if you think Jesus is the Son of God, then you think that he's omnipresent, all knowing, and everything. So yeah, he knew about how things will be today. I don't think that's the case anymore. If I'm being perfectly honest, I don't believe that, right? So in Jesus' time, from my perspective, I'm like, okay, well, war to Jesus is like, men with swords and shields and maybe some like, slingshots and whatever weapons they had back then. Again, still horrible. But the war that we have today is literally planet ending. That's the difference. There is no, okay, eventually they'll heal. If the right countries get it popping, that's it. Even if by accident, you would imagine all these nuclear weapons, somebody's going to do something wrong one day and something will explode or whatever, right? We are playing with fire. And so I'm not seeing this addressed. And I would like, I'm not saying I need to, they don't owe me anything, but I would like for Jenk, I would like for Anna, I would like for Crystal, I would like for Sagar, I would like for Kyle, I would like for many of the right-wing ones, the Republican ones, right? Alex Jones. I would like Tucker Carlson. I would like for these people to know that maybe it's a majority, maybe it's a large minority, whatever. It is not an inconsequential amount of our politicians and people in office. They want the war because from their perspective, the wars are needed before the return of the Messiah. Now, again, I don't know how they read that and not realize this part here, which is he's talking to his disciples. And right, and so Jesus believed these things would happen in the time of his disciples. Again, we read them thinking he's talking to us, but again, he's talking to his disciples. It's kind of like that verse where he says, down here, I find where he says, when he says before this generation passes away, I'm like, Jesus is talking to them, the actual disciples there. He's being literal. Before this generation, before you all who I'm talking to passes away, this yada yada yada, and they all passed away. So again, I'm telling you, I like this needs to be discussed seriously. I'm gonna wrap up here because I don't really have more to say. This is why so many of our politicians are pro-Israel. And solving this problem is a much more difficult problem to solve than the money in politics or the industrial complex, right? Now, those are also hard to solve, and people have been trying to solve those problems. But I'm saying, even if we solve those problems, you have the religious doctrine, and that is a much harder thing to shake, right? And to a certain degree, as it pertains to Palestine, we're talking about Iran and Israel, because another portion of this is you cannot believe a certain group of people are special or chosen and not believe that their lives are worth more than everybody else. And I know Christians pretend like they can do this dance, or no, to be chosen just means that they were responsible and all that stuff. No. If you believe somebody is chosen, it means that that the value of their life is more than everybody else. And so to a certain degree, the Palestinians, they didn't have a chance because they weren't born Jews, right? Iran, the Iranians, fuck them. They weren't born Jews. No, can't do it. You can't do it. So I'm gonna wrap up here. This was an hour and 40 minutes of a live stream. My voice is cracking. Again, I don't know how y'all do this for hours on hours on hours. Y'all got all my respect for the streamers that be streaming for like hours on hours on hours, because I'm like, yo, I'm tired. I'm hot in my room. But again, I'm gonna chop these videos up and try to get them out as soon as possible to the people that need to get that, Anna and Jenkin them, and tag them, tell them, because we need to have this conversation. All right. See you guys next time.